Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Mathis. Welcome to 7 Minutes to PMP Mastery. We are a premier ATP with Project Management Institute. Today's video that we're going to talk about for the PMP exam is on understanding cost estimating. A lot of times, many of us have inherited budgets from management or the director of the PMO, and maybe that is not something you typically get involved in. For the purpose of your PMP test, you're going to have to understand how to do project estimating because the estimate is a big part, and as a certified project manager, the expectation is that you would be able to do this as well. In project management, cost begins as an estimate and quickly becomes an expectation as we begin talking about it. So those early estimates are very important for us. And so let's look at how those estimates come about in the PMI world. So here's some myths about cost estimating. Costs are already set before you're assigned a project. That might be true in your situation, but don't think like that for the PMP test. Think in the PMP test that you're starting all the way from the project charter all the way until the handoff of that project. Costs are set by management and the PM or the team. Typically, for the purpose of the test, you need to think that the project manager is the one creating that budget, unless you're talking about agile. And even on the agile side, the team is the one who has most of the authority. And of course, you've got the customer embedded in that team most of the time. So he or she is most of the time controlling their own budget on some of those questions. Cost only focuses on the budget and not on estimating techniques. That's not true. You need to understand these estimating techniques. And some of these estimating techniques will not only be brought up on cost, but they'll also be brought up over on the schedule side. Cost estimating never changes. That's not true. You might change how and why you're doing an estimate a particular way because of crisis or because of some opportunity that comes up on your project. Cost estimating techniques. Let's talk about the three that are mainly on the test. And so analogous, parametric, and bottom up. Now these three are talked about. They will give you scenarios. They don't typically tell you it's an analogous or it's a parametric or a bottom up. They just describe what's happening. Let's start with an analogous. Analogous cost estimating focuses on using a past project. That's almost always the way they will provide the information. This project is similar to a project you did 3 years ago or 5 years ago. Sometimes in the test question they will call this top down. Now I know in your world top down might mean something else, but for the purpose of the test, if they use top down, they're talking about analogous estimating. So like the current project in many areas, they'll make a phrase like that. This is like the similar project they did 5 years ago. Most effective when using recent or historical project data. Now let's examine this for a moment. So let's say you're putting a new fence up in your backyard and you're in a subdivision and every backyard is the exact same size. If your neighbor just put a new fence up for $5,000 and you're putting one up the next month, that estimate's going to be pretty close. But if your neighbor spent $5,000 10 years ago and now you're putting one up, and so it's probably going to be a lot more than $5,000. It's most effective when you're using recent or historical information. It's produced quickly, it relies on expertise, it adjusts for inflation, it's less detailed than bottom up, and that's the reason why we do it so many times in the early stages of a traditional project is because it is so fast. Parametric cost estimating. You will see this when they talk about using some type of statistical relationship to come up with an amount. So much per square foot, so much per linear foot. When they start talking about that linear foot, square foot, and so the estimate's going to be this, they're talking about a parametric. It requires reliable data. It's more accurate than an analogous, but it also is scalable for any size project and can be applied to cost, time, or resources. So they don't just do this one either. For cost. So what you'll see is look real close at how they came up with the number, the actual budget number. That's where the telltale sign is going to be on this. A lot of it will sound like something else, but look at how they came up with the numbers. If they're taking a statistical relationship to get that number, it's going to be parametric in spite of what everything else looks like. Bottom-up estimating connects to the work breakdown structure. And so this is considered to be the most accurate. And the reason is because you and your team typically work on this. So the way PMI sets this up is in any of their material is that when you first get a project, and this is typically going to be done on a traditional project, even though they are now starting to tiptoe over and use bits and pieces of this for coming up with Agile and Scrum estimates. But most of the time, it's going to be on the traditional. And so when you start seeing this, they go from creating a work breakdown structure to then coming up with the bottom-up estimate. And if you think about a work breakdown structure, it looks like an org chart, but it's a breakdown structure of all the work that you're going to do. So you're breaking it down in categories of work all the way down to the work package level. And then you're giving a duration for that, and you're giving a cost for each work package. Now, your work package is the smallest level of the WBS, but if I take a work package and bring it out here on my desktop, I can break that work package down into activities. But I've got an estimate per work package. That's called bottom up. It's the most correct. It takes the most time, though, is the negative, and it involves other experts and subject matter experts to tell me how much that work package is going to cost, and it requires a well-defined scope because the WBS is built off of that scope. So if the scope is real loose, then of course your work package would be real loose. The PERT estimating technique stands for Program Evaluation Review Technique. Now listen to this one, really important, because this is the one calculation you're having to do right now on the test. They have removed most of the calculations, or removed all the calculations since 2022, and now this is the only one that you're having to calculate. We'll see over time whether they'll put some of these others in. So this is optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely. And so PERT stands for those three. And so the best case scenario, if everything goes right, is the most optimistic. The most likely is going to be the realistic expected duration or cost, and the pessimistic is the worst case scenario. And these three estimates, which creates an average, capture a variability and risk in the project. So let me show you what this looks like. So here are your two estimates. And so they had used both of these on the PMP test. So when the estimate needs to be a probability, you'll use this. And so a weighted average, which is the older estimate, is optimistic plus 4 times the most likely plus pessimistic divided by 6. If you look at the new one, which is the non-weighted average, it's optimistic plus most likely plus pessimistic divided by 3. Now you're asking the question of how do we know which one they're using? Well, they tell us you're going to have to pick up something in that scenario that lets you know that they are weighing that particular calculation heavily, and that's going to let you know that it's 4 times the most likely. So I hope this helps you as you see these two, but make sure you know these, make sure you can calculate these two. And then as we close out today, let me thank you so much for watching the video today. And so we do virtual PMP boot camps every other month. I teach them. And so if you got a question for me or you'd like to register for a boot camp, you can go through our website. And so do both there, or you can send me an email. I'll be glad to work with you and see if I can answer any questions for you. Hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching the video. Bye now.